Hello and welcome to Write On, the podcast from Final Draft. We are here to talk about all things screenwriting. I'm your host, Phil Galasso. Today's interview is with Bruce Miller, showrunner for The Handmaid's Tale on Hulu.
Miss Osborne, if you were returned to Gilead, would you be subject to danger of torture, a risk to your life, or a risk of cruel and unusual treatment or punishment?
I'm looking for June Osborne.
You're better off without her. Everyone that helps her ends up on the wall.
She has eluded your soldiers for 19 days. Find her and bring her to me.
Do you have some secret, brilliant plan?
I made a promise to hurt them the way we hurt.
This morning, a plane left Gilead and landed at Pearson. There were 86 children on board.
This'll start a war.
We came here to fight.
No, you came here to fight.
You can't save her. You understand that, right? Some women don't want to be saved.
We're the ones we've been waiting for.
Bruce and host Sharday Sellers discuss the challenges of writing Season 4 with a virtual writer's room, creating complex characters and understanding their points of view, staying true to the history of the show, and more. Check it out.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Sharday here again, and I am with a very, very special guest. Literally, I'm very nervous to be talking to this person today because I'm such a huge fan of their show. I'm here with showrunner Bruce Miller from The Handmaid's Tale. Hi, Bruce.
Hi, it's so nice to be here.
First of all, let me just say, I did mention earlier I am a huge fan of your show, but I really am a huge fan of your show. I'm not just saying that for every guest. I've been keeping up with Handmaid's Tale, obviously, since season 1. I never read the books, but I'm obsessed with the television show. So congratulations to you and the crew and the cast for all of the good work you've done over 4 seasons.
Thank you. And as you say, it's the biggest of all group efforts. I can't even tell you how, a few people get a lot of attention and a lot of people do a ton of hard work. So thank you. But, this season especially, I was here and they were all up in Toronto making a television show without me. So they deserve much of the credit.
How did that work? Did you virtually check in? Was it because of pandemic reasons?
Yes. Normally I'm on set, or up in Toronto the whole time. I like to be up there. I feel like the show's better when I'm up there and you can turn one 20-minute conversation into a 5-minute conversation by answering a question. It's lovely. So, I like being up there. I wasn't able to go this year. I went at the very beginning before COVID, and then I left when we shut down in March. And then, when it was time for us to go back up, I certainly wasn't essential to be on the set. And every single breath that anybody took on set was possibly bad. So we reduced the numbers of people who were actually on set, and then even more the number of people who were close to the camera by we had a quarter of the people doing what the hair people, the makeup people, the grips, the electrics, the camera people do. We moved 75% of those people out. So I wasn't essential to that. They did rig up a way that I could watch what was going on set, like the same way I do when I'm on set, get a feed from the cameras. But, it didn't really work out as like me sticking my nose in someone else's business. And so, we relied on having 3 seasons under our belt and a lot of communication. And the day-to-day shooting took care of itself because Elizabeth Moss, who's been on the show since the beginning, who's an EP on the show, who's directed this year, Yvonne Strahovski, our entire cast has been there since the beginning, and they are treated as creative artists. So when it came time to them to be creative artists on their own, they were completely set. There were some new people this season, McKenna Grace, and that was very hard. Poor McKenna started shooting and shot a week, and then she had to take, 4 months off. And McKenna's, 14.
Yeah.
So McKenna could have grown 1.5 feet in those months. She grew a little bit, but she was worried, oh my gosh, what happens if I get too big and I can't come back? Who knows how long this is going to last. So they did it up there on their own. We did a Zoom writer's room in Los Angeles, which was okay because we all knew each other very well and we were only finishing up the season. And then I just zoomed into all the meetings that I normally would go to in Toronto, but on set, pretty much left them to their own devices as, because it seemed like the smartest way to go. And then I did all my post-production via the internet as well. Normally I sit in an editing room, and a lot of my job, a lot of a showrunner's job is editing the episodes after they're done. I spent most of my time doing that. And so that I did online. It was actually pretty it worked very, very well. Luckily, we had test-driven some of this stuff, the remote stuff, because we shoot here and shoot in Toronto and edit in Toronto and post in Toronto, and yet we write here. And so we have always been a little bit kind of socially distant anyway. And so we were able to kind of use some of that technology to help us. But, this year was very difficult. And I think the season turned out very well because of the groundwork we were able to lay in the last 3 seasons. I mean, when we were actually doing it, I've never done anything so hard. This season wasn't so difficult to make the show.
Well, I'm all caught up, and we're no spoilers on this podcast, but I think I agree with you. I think it's some of the best work I've ever seen on Handmaid's Tale, and I'm really, really excited to see where the rest of it leads. Again,
what's the last thing you saw?
Well, it's funny enough, I fell asleep. I watched Will and Grace at night, and I woke up this morning to the new episode playing, and I said, no, I'm not ready. So I had to, because Hulu just plays, man. You just
I know, yeah.
Wake up to a new show. So I heard, I'm not going to say the character's name because I think it will give away. I heard a familiar character's voice in my sleep, and then I woke up and there they are on screen, and it's spoiling it for me, and I had to turn it off. So I'm caught up before this last Wednesday's episode.
We have a 10 episode season this season, and it allows you really to kind of have a lot more happen in each episode because, a season, whether it's 22 or 10 or 8, it kind of feels like the same scale of story.
Yeah.
Because there's a kind of a one bite kind of aspect of a season. And so what we do is we just, think up everything we would think up if we were on a network show where we had to make 24 of them, and then we just do it all in 10.
I have to ask you a question, and I don't want you to take offense to it, but Elizabeth Moss' character is obviously the lead of the show. She makes it really hard for me to root for her sometimes because she frustrates me, and I want her to do well. And sometimes
that never happens with real people in your life.
I know.
They never frustrate you, do they?
I know.
Or they don't do what you want them to do. It's really amazing. It's only
literally
TV characters.
Only TV characters, especially in season 4. Again, not to spoil, but her decision making, sometimes I'll have a chat with her through the screen. I'll say, come on, do we have to do this? Like let's think about this really quickly. And so in the writer's room, how do you incorporate such a complex character, knowing that she is the lead? You do want people to cheer for her, but she is human and she is going to make mistakes as well.
I don't know if I want people to cheer for her. I want them to understand her.
Oh, yeah.
And be kind of understand her point of view rather than be in, because the fact is she's gone through a trauma that we can barely fathom. We've been through it with her as much as we can. So I think that what I'm trying to say is that, the road through trauma and back is very, very long, very, very difficult and different for everybody, and incredibly frustrating for the people around them and the people going through it. I don't know that June is any less frustrated with herself than you are, but she has to deal with it because it's her. So I think that the way we deal with it in the writer's room is very much what would June do in the situation? What would I do in that situation? What would you do? Not someone on TV, but what do you actually know, and what decision would you be able to make? And are you making a decision because you saw it on TV a bunch of times, but in real life it's a lot harder? June says, I'm never gonna leave without my daughter. Well, it's easy to say that, but so what a lot of it is it's frustrating because it is an intractable world there's no good decisions. So when you get frustrated with the decision she made, a lot of times she's making a decision and it's, the voting in her head is 51-49. It's not 100-0.
Yeah.
So, because you come out on a slightly different 49-51, it doesn't mean hers isn't valid. I just like the fact that she doesn't seem to be any better at being a rebel than I would be.
Right. Yes, exactly. She's not this martyr person. Like, she's no Captain America. She's just a woman trying to do her best. And I really love that about the show, but it also is the one thing I have about June. I'm just like, I just want to slap you.
Well, Sade, there's two kinds of television shows. There's the TV shows where the characters are in Star Wars, and there are the TV shows where the characters have seen Star Wars.
Yeah.
Our characters have seen it. They're not in it.
Exactly. Well, I love that. Now, speaking about, we touched briefly earlier about this whole pandemic and how it changed everything in virtual writers' rooms. Is there anything from the pandemic filming that you would take into the next year?
Oh, absolutely. It's a good question. We changed our hours. One of the biggest things we changed was we wanted people to get more sleep, because just the number at the beginning, when there was testing but there was no treatment, we thought the biggest thing is to keep people's immunity up, and on our show people get sick because they don't get enough sleep, and it's always been a problem. So we changed our hour structure. So instead of working a 12-hour day, we were working a 10-hour day and eating lunch on the run. It's called French hours. That worked spectacularly. Everybody loved it. I think we're going to keep that definitely. We've been trying to do that for years.
Yes.
So that worked really well. Yeah. And but a lot of the things that we had to do were so painful. Just we had to actually not do storylines we had planned to do because we could not get the actors to Toronto. So we had Moira and Una have this great love story that had 7 or 8 other scenes that just weren't, Zoe Ashton, who plays Una, who's an amazing British actress, and Britain is not the US, and to get from Britain to the US suddenly became very difficult. So she was able to come and do some of her work, but not all the work we planned. So most of it was quite heartbreaking that we had to truncate stories. And I think some of the audience response and some of their criticism, I'm with them, because they are exactly that way, because we could not do anything else. Production-wise, we couldn't do it.
Yeah. And I think I'm glad that you said that, because now people can listen to it. They can understand. I really do feel like that whole year of television will be a moment we get to look back on and say, hey, we pushed, you pushed forward. You did it. We did it. It may not have been exactly what we planned, but again, I still think it's been a fabulous TV up to this point.
Well, thanks. It was very hard. I think the best thing we did was, the whole thing you're trying to do on the set is create an open space where the actors forget they're at work and all the creative people forget they're at work, and they're just having fun and doing what they're doing, and they don't remember time, and they don't remember money, and that's what you're trying to do, is create a bubble. Well, this whole thing was about a bubble. Yeah. Everybody was trying to create a bubble suddenly. So we just needed our bubble not to be about COVID, but to be about nothing, so that nothing outside was in. Not that we were here feeling safe from COVID, but we're here feeling like we can do our normal work.
Yeah.
And so that our actors being able to kind of go, okay, when we're in the bubble, we're doing our normal job. We're them being able to devote themselves with the same amount of, expertise and specificity and clarity that made the show possible. But we allowed that space. And I think taking that away as well from the process of making sure that the most important thing is, no matter how stressful and busy and speedily you are moving and how difficult everything is, the actors should not feel like anything is moving speedily or difficult, and not just the actors, but everybody who's making a creative decision needs to have a beat to take that creative decision. So this created that world well, and I think it just reinforced the idea that protecting that, like with a giant moat and a big wall and a bunch of army men, protecting that kind of quiet space for them to do their work. The results are amazing in this season, and part of it is because not only were they happy to be there, they were happy to be working and happy to be with each other. They were thrilled because nobody else they knew was working. Everybody was stuck at home, and they were getting tested 3 times a week and going to work and getting paid. And so it was, people enjoyed it a lot because they were realizing how rare it was at that time.
No, I love the conversation of the bubble and protectiveness, just not just for the actors, but for everyone to work creatively. And as someone who wants to be a showrunner one day, and maybe a listener is listening to this as well, after 4 years, what is the biggest lesson you've learned with showrunning this program for yourself?
Well, one of the things is you have to approach it like a television show and work on it like it's a TV show, and not work on it like it's a piece of art that no one can touch. I think that's a great way to turn it into something that it shouldn't be. You don't be fooled by the fussiness of your own show. We make it in the same way I've made every other TV show I've been on. So I think taking it moment by moment, making good artistic decisions, and not thinking about, honestly, when the show got a lot of acclaim in its first year, and when you sit down to write the second season, you have like a big Emmy sitting in the middle of your keyboard. And you can't type around it. You're like, oh my God.
Yes, I can relate. Yes.
Yeah. And so what you do is you just go, okay, let's just throw this away and let's just write the show. And once you learn that, but this season was even more of that. There's all this crazy stuff happening. And what you have to do is just focus on, we're going to try to make this scene make sense for this story with this. And as the season went along, some of our episodes ended up being a lot shorter than we wanted because we weren't able to film enough stuff, but we just had to make the show we could make. And I think that focusing on it as a TV show and not saying, oh, we're making the fourth season of The Handmaid's Tale during a pandemic. Oh, boy, think of all that stuff. Oh, and the election. It's like, oh my God, just make it. Let's just make it. Let's just put on a show in the barn like we're doing, and not think about any of that. And that kept us. It keeps us kind of on the same page all the time. That we're just making a TV show where everybody on this has worked on lots of other things, some great, some awful, and know that the best way to keep the show excellent is to keep making it the same way we've been making it, which is very workaday, very blue collar, very just making sure all the bolts are tight.
Well, I'm going to push back a little bit because there is one episode in particular from this first half of this latest season where I was in bed watching it and I said, hey, this is a budget. We've got some budget going on here. Like it's I don't know if it's just me, but I felt like this season you definitely kicked it up with the action and just it feels like there's a lot more money being pumped into the episodes for me.
It wasn't really a money issue because, honestly, they put tons of money into the show, but most of the money went to COVID. I mean, so most of the money went to, we're going to shoot in this location and we spend a month planning to shoot in that location. And so you just, go on and you lost all this money and time. And so you have to go do a new location, but you don't have any of those resources. But the show this year was a traveling show. It's not normally a traveling.
Yeah. That's what it was. From
place to place. And so the reason we talked about this with the everybody at the end of last season. So I think the reason it wasn't a huge money change is because we were able to pivot early. We would be able to say, because on our show, actually, the most expensive thing, the thing we spend the most money on is building our sets.
Right.
When you build the Waterford house, those are so beautiful and archaic, archaic detail and everything is so beautiful that we spend a ton of money building that and interior inside of a milk truck and all of those kinds of things. And so going from place to place or kind of the big scale of things is not as expensive for us because we're not actually, the level of detail and which book is on the shelf and which wallpaper and this is that is astonishing. And taking vacuum molds of banisters and remaking them in the shop so they look perfectly exactly like the real house. All of that stuff is hard work and goes away a little bit when you have a little more scale. The other thing is during COVID, scale was the one thing we had. We had a lot of big empty places. We didn't have people, but we had space because every place was empty. Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's really great to hear because in my mind, I was like, wow, they must have got a huge budget upkick for this season because everything is just so much like you said, the set pieces. I'm not trying to give away anything, but if you watch this season, then you know what I'm talking about, especially in episode 3 or 2, which one Elizabeth Moss directs. I was like,
3,
I was mind blown. I was like, this is great.
And we built a big set. The inside of that place was a big set, and the roof where we threw people off was a big set. The crossing, there's a scene on a train crossing. That was a real train crossing, just with no train. You can't. If you imagine how long it takes a train to get up and running, and then you have to move it back. There's no way to use a real train.
So that's CGI?
Well, we had a train that was there and in the right spot, and then we just took lots of pictures of it and built it in the computer so we didn't actually kill our actors. But other than that, it was the train. Just we couldn't move it through. It was far too dangerous to move it through the scene. It
was brilliant and honestly the most breathtaking ending for an episode. I think I sat there agape, just like, what did I just watch? For
the next one's more.
Oh no, I saw that one. I'm trying
not
to
six.
Oh, 6.
The one you haven't seen.
The one I haven't seen. Well, good. I'm gonna watch that one.
They're all like that. I don't know. And it's Lizzie and the cast and the director. It's not. They take every little thing and just make it beautiful.
I want to ask a couple more questions, but the first one I want to ask is: have you had the same writers' room for the last 4 seasons?
No, but not through choice. We've lost a few people here and there to other jobs and this, that, but we have the same core that we've had from the beginning. And we, I would very happily keep all the people, but unfortunately they succeed and move off, and I can't keep them from succeeding forever.
Damn.
But Kira Snyder, who's not coming back next season, has been on since day one. She was also, I've worked with her on 4 or 5 other shows. She's been, the light of my life, and now she's going off to do something else. So that's very, very, very hard.
Yeah.
For me, yeah. And whenever we have to write cast members off the show, or people go on to other projects are unavailable to us, all of that stuff.
Write them off the show, not train them off the show, as I've seen.
And they'll probably be back in flashbacks, the actors.
You're right.
Also, and they are the 2 most wonderful, Bahia and Nina Curry. They're such wonderful, generous actors. And I know Lizzie and Maddie and all those people, they're all a family, those little group.
Yeah.
And it was so hard for all of them.
Me too. I'm in that family. I'm the viewer family who's like, wait a second.
They're amazing. And Nina just auditioned for a role as a handmaid in the first episode.
Yeah.
So did Bahia. And now they're here, 5 years later, and I said, when I cast Alma, when we cast Nina, I watched the audition. I was like, nah, she's too pretty. It'll never work. She's so she is beautiful, but she kind of holds herself, looks like a normal person, so you forget that she's that
a normal person.
Yeah. She holds herself like she's mortal, like
me and you.
Yeah, like me and you, not like Yvonne.
No, definitely not. What do you look for, and as a showrunner, for new writers joining the team? Are you reading their samples? Are you looking for their body of work?
Well, it's a combination of everything, and everything is measured kind of in a small drop into a big bucket. So their resume, what shows they've been on is part of it. Mostly I know that that's not really your choice. You get hired on the shows you get hired on because the jobs are available. So it's more how you did on the show, so I call a lot of people that the writer has worked with. That's normally what I do. So I know enough writers now that I can usually find someone who they've worked with who I actually know will tell me the truth. I read samples. I'm very dyslexic, so I don't read very well or very fast. And I don't really get much out of reading them. I mean, if I read it 30 or 40 times like I do with our scripts, that would be fine. But I don't have the time. And I actually defer much more to my group of readers about their writing. And also I feel in a little ways like if they have a base amount of skill, I can teach them the style of the show. So what I look for, though, is there's a lot of jobs that are part of that job. Being let's say, not a producer, a staff writer, you have to be able to write. You have to be able to rewrite based on notes, and you have to be able to contribute in the room. Sometimes contributing in the room when you're a staff writer means, I've been on shows where staff writers were told not to speak for the first season. The first season. So yeah. And that's a legit thing. If you think it takes a certain amount of time for someone to learn, and you want to sit there and learn, it does take a long time, but I don't do that. What I'd say is you want to develop a way to be in the room that's comfortable for you, because the most important thing in the room is not talking, it's listening. And so if you're there with and you have a way of being in the room that's uncomfortable, it takes a lot of work, you're not going to be listening. You're going to be worried about you. And the whole idea, whenever you're in the writer's room, whenever you're wondering what to do, so I like writers whose default position is attentive listening. I like people who are generally kind and generous with their notes, even if their notes are not so kind and generous. There's ways to do it. I look for an incredibly strong work ethic. I've never found a writer that doesn't have one, but they have to have a strong work ethic. I like people who are kind of interested in learning the next few steps of what they don't have, because people who are the problem I often have, honestly, the problem I have is people who come on the show and want the next job but won't do this job. Yes. And it's like, I need someone to do this job. Even if you can do the next job, if you do the next job, I need to hire someone else to do your job.
Right.
And I understand the next job's more interesting, but it doesn't matter to me. So I understand the urgency of people who get hired as assistants and all those people to move up. But I also understand the fact that there are jobs there that need to be done, and it's not, so what do you do? As a staff writer, I always say, try to find out from your showrunner what your actual job is and do it. What do they expect from you? Do they expect you to come in and pitch stuff? Because what I expect, what I talk to my staff writers about is your job in the room is to listen to the question being posed by the showrunners or the upper level people and help solve it. It's not your job to come up with the question. So just try to figure out what the hell they're trying to solve. It could be what goes on in the episode. And then think about it in terms of, do I have an answer? Do I have something that will help the question? Or do I have something that will make the question disappear? It's not an answer, but it gets rid of it.
Right.
Those are the things you can be thinking about. But other than that, because it helps you, you don't have to worry about the season. You don't have to worry about network notes. I have to worry about that. I'm paying you to sit there. And if I say, okay, how do we get out of this scene? That's all you're thinking about is how to get out of that scene. The whole room is how to get out of that scene. And so I think that a lot of times it's the fault of the showrunner or the co-EPs not telling the staff writer or the new person
what they need and what they're expecting.
What's expected of them. I mean, and it's so funny because if I got a job in a restaurant, I would expect everybody to tell me what I'm expecting. But I get a job on a fucking show and no one tells me anything.
No, that's great. No, that's really great advice, because I never thought of it that way. I started my first staffing position this year and I was just like, I'm just here.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So now I'm really going to take that with me in my next job. Like, what do you expect me to do? What job is it that
How can I contribute?
That's really great. Thank you. Yeah. I have one question left. And it's actually about yourself as a writer. So we asked this to all of our guests. What advice would you give your younger writer self?
I think that your patience will pay off. I think I had a hard time, not a hard time being patient. I felt like I was a lot of times like I was being a dope for being so patient. I kind of approach every job very positively. I'm not a big political string puller. I don't try to move up. I don't try to do anything like that. And all my friends were moving up and running their own shows. And the patience is the least common attribute here. So if you look at me, I read a book when I was in college 35 years ago, and now I'm running that show.
Oh my gosh.
So you just got to, the things that you're interested in, stay interested in. It's mostly about hanging in there. The first time I went to the Emmys, I won. I'd never been before to the ever. I've never been invited to the Emmys.
Right.
I've never been to the Emmys.
Well, wait, first time you better win, right? That's a great way to go to the Emmys for the first time.
It was very funny. I went to the Emmys and I won, and I was backstage, and there was this guy there who was an attendant at the Emmys, but he was a very old gentleman. He turned to me and he patted me on the shoulder. He said, "You had a good night. Now you're fucked."
Oh,
like you can't ever come back.
Right. Yeah.
When are you going to come back? It's going to suck every time. Yeah.
Right.
But it's one of those things, you look at a baked cake like my career and you say, wow, of course, all those ingredients go into this, but it's mostly about patience and doing the job that you're hired to do. And generally being, if you are neutral or positive in a writer's room, you're a help. And I don't think I was at the beginning. I think probably the advice I'd give to myself is shut up in the writer's room. It was a very long time before I learned how to listen in the room. And that was the biggest change, because I think that there's a difference. The big difference is between listening and waiting to talk.
Yes. That's what my old boss used to say all the time. He said, there's a difference between, you have to know, listening to respond and listening to hear. I always love that advice.
That's a great, yeah. And so what I always try to do, I try to keep those things super simple. Like I keep everything super simple. Like when I'm writing a script, I kind of write what's it about on a little card. And then I just keep circling back to that.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing on the show. You have to keep things very simple. And I think, if you look at it in terms of patience or attention, but I think the big thing in the writer's room is if you think about everything from a point of view of just very, very, very basic respect and not, like a huge, we all have to, I think people do respect each other. They respect each other so much that when they start to talk, they're so excited by what they want to say, they want to talk. I mean, it's not disrespect, but I think what you want to do is assume that when someone talks, it's really, 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 really hard for them to talk. But they love what they're saying because it's really, really hard for them to talk, and they are talking. So assume what they're saying is their little beautiful baby, and ask them questions about their baby. It's like when someone shows you a picture of their child, you say, what a beautiful child. You can say they have an ugly dog because they showed you a picture of the child.
Yes.
So when they show you a picture of your dog, you say, that's a beautiful dog. You don't talk about their child. They're showing you a picture of the thing they love. So when they tell you they're showing you something they love, make sure you treat it like it's something someone loves and try to figure out why they love it. Even if your answer is, boy, are you wrong. What you're trying to say is, why do you love this ugly dog? Why do you love this hideous, but don't say ugly. Why do you love this beautiful dog? Yeah. And so that's what you're trying to find out from a younger writer without, stomping
killing
on them.
It. Right.
And oftentimes I find that other staff writers kick other writers in the teeth, other staff writers much more than upper level.
The upper level. That's really interesting.
It's totally not on purpose, but it's just, you've got an idea. I've got a better idea. I'm so excited. I can't wait for you to stop talking.
Instead of giving him that first idea, the breath and airspace. You know what? I feel like this is the Right On podcast, and you've been such a wonderful guest, but I almost feel like I should be paying you. It feels like a therapy session for me as a writer. I've taken so many tips for myself out of this. So thank you for that.
You're very welcome. And I think that, the business could not be any more open now in terms of, because there's so many different shows and there's so many different, it's like, before it was a game of musical chairs and you didn't get seated by the beginning of the broadcast season. You sat now. Oh my God, I haven't got a job in that cycle forever. So I think it's for you, for everybody starting out, it is a spectacular time to go in. The only problem is the people above you aren't quite as experienced. So you have to go in with a little bit more of an agenda, and your agenda has to be, how can I add? How can I help? Because the showrunner is so busy, they can't even ask.
Right.
They don't even know what to ask. Yeah.
Right. So. Well, you know what, Bruce, this has been amazing. Thank you much for taking the time to speak to me today, and congratulations on a stellar season. Even with all the obstacles you had, much like June, you are killing it. So I really appreciate it. And everyone, please watch Handmaid's Tale. It's streaming live on Hulu every Wednesday. Let me tell you, because I'm watching it on Wednesday evenings. Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Bruce Miller for coming on the show and to Sharday Sellers for hosting. The Handmaid's Tale is streaming on Hulu right now. And as always, thanks to you, our listeners. If you liked this episode, leave us a review, and if you haven't already, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you get your podcasts. For news about future episodes and more, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at Final Draft Inc. and Instagram at Final Draft Screenwriting. This episode was produced by Kayla Guess with help from associate producer Emma Vranich. Music by T. Kelly. Thanks again, everyone. Until next time, right on.